And I was just going to say that this is, I really appreciate you doing this, making this easy for me. So to the extent that it works for on your end, it's, I was able to schedule this whenever I wanted. I'm sitting at home at my desk. So you made this very accessible for me. So I'm grateful for your making this so simple.
Yeah, of course. It's a busy time of year, and there's definitely positives and negatives of this virtual world that we're all in now and Zoom calls, but the benefit is with scheduling and we can make it fit in. So I'm glad that we could be accommodating and fit this in right towards kind of the home stretch, I guess, in a sense.
Right, right.
But yeah, so now that we're recording, if you'd like to share any kind of just general background or opening
Great.
statements or anything that you think would be important for people to know as they're heading to the polls or filling out their mail-in ballot. We'd love to just give you this opportunity to share anything you'd like, and then we can dive into a few of the questions that we provided. And those are the exact same questions that we've been providing to other candidates, just to have consistency and just give everyone an equal opportunity to share their thoughts with us.
Great, Craig. Thanks so much. So I'll take you up on that. I have it's probably a couple minutes worth of just kind of an intro and a few thoughts if you could just take it from there. So great. My name is Ryan Schuchard. Pronouns are he, him. I have a voice that normally sounds a little different. I have a cold today, but I feel fine, and so I'm going to power through. And thank you for whoever's listening to bear with my my voice. So I'd like to say I'll say a few things about me, and then a few things about my kind of overall approach to what I'd like to talk with you about as the disability community. So I am a policy professional who is working at the intersection of climate action and transportation, or specifically transportation mobility options. And I am also a dad who has kindergarten and second grade girls, and am working to try to live car light. We have a car, but I'm working to try to use public transportation and whatever that means, bike, bus, and whatnot, as much as we can. And I am a member of the city's Transportation Advisory Board, through which I'm trying to create changes to help improve mobility options as we go. And Craig, I've been grateful to have a few conversations with you over the last couple of years during my time on tab, and hear from you. And I'm really glad to be here. So my my overall approach to running for city council, which I'm doing for the first time, never run for elected office before. I was motivated, I suppose, large part through my work on tab and becoming, while I think the city staff is doing a really great job on a lot of fronts, came kind of frustrated by our lack of transportation mobility options, in particular our reduction of transit services, and our I guess slow pace of getting on what I think is track. So and I say this believing that these are really political types of decisions that are needed that stand in the way of us doing more. So I thought I would run, and my overall plan as a city council candidate is I want to make Boulder more inclusive, safer, and more affordable. Those are my sort of three areas. So if that's sort of about me, and then if I could just say maybe a few things about the conversation for today. So the first is kind of a caveat, and it's that I'm going to try to talk to what I think seems right based on what I've learned, what I've heard, just in my experience. And I have a lot of ideas, but I'm still learning a lot. And in some cases, I have an understanding of the problem to some extent. I don't know the way forward. In other cases, I just have blind spots and I don't know. So I'm going to try to be as forthright as I can about, or I'd really like to continue to learn from CPWD and the wider disability community. But I will say, before I tell you a few kind of detail points, is that my overall driving motivator, one of my key overall driving motivators in running for city council, is I want to make physical mobility through the world more inclusive and more affordable and safer for everyone. And so this is a conversation that I'm really, excuse me, eager to have. So just a few points kind of to set the stage, like as far as problem statement, I'm thinking about this. First, I have gotten kind of interested in this whole space of improving our mobility options society-wide, because it's a matter of our liberties. And we know that in Boulder, like in other communities, 30 to 40% of people can't drive, shouldn't drive, or they're financially or otherwise stretched to drive. This is a big public health issue, and it's something that matters to a lot of people. Number two, this is not a question about cars versus other modes, specific other modes, but rather about going from having given what should be basically a public utility, transportation, given it over to an industry that essentially is mostly driven by Wall Street. And the result is we have a monomodal system that is creating hardship and isolation for a lot of people. And this is a source of a lot of problems, a lot of obvious ones, but it's also, it's a source of some of our unwellness and even democracy by creating so much separation between us. It's also very expensive from an energy and material standpoint. And yet our, sort of economic systems are create incentives to profit. So what I would like to help to move us towards is a more multimodal, accessible system of transportation mobility in which we have strategies for multiple mobility modes that interoperate in a way to serve people's different needs which by person might change throughout the day, throughout different days, and even trip. So that's what I'm excited about fundamentally. And I'll close on my intro by just saying that I know that the conversation that we're going to have now is more than about just transportation. But I start there simply because this is where I bring some professional grounding to build from. And finally, I can't represent you or the disability community without you. I know that. So I'm going to try to give some answers that are all kind of working answers as we go. I'm incredibly excited to learn about the community and how I can be part of solutions, and also to talk about how we can coalesce with a wider community that cares about these things too. So that's my intro, Greg. Thanks for the platform.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the introduction and a little bit of background and highlighting your main reason for running and what you want to focus on. A lot of the issues that you're passionate about, we are also passionate about, and transportation is a very big issue, and equal access to transportation is essential to independent living. And that's what we practice at the Center for People with Disabilities, is the independent living philosophy, where we feel everyone should be empowered and have the ability to make decisions about their own life and circumstances, and being able to move around our community safely and efficiently and affordably is really important, especially the multimodal lens, because we get around in very unique ways and everybody is different the way we navigate through the community. But regardless of that, we need to think about the barriers that are in place and how we can work together to remove them. So I've really been appreciative of your work in the Transportation Advisory Board, and that you've been gracious enough to have conversations with us in the past. So I would like to continue on kind of the transportation question, since that's kind of where we started. So one of the questions that we'd like to start with, and kind of framing transportation through the lens of people with disabilities and needs that may be unique to our community, how would you plan to ensure that public spaces and city facilities, as well as transportation, are fully accessible and accommodating for people with disabilities?
Great. What a good question. It's a big question. And I'm going to offer about four points, four thoughts. And I come to this, like I will others, at a level of kind of a high level, which I think is frankly where we have the most power. So first thing is a number of the things I've discussed in the introduction regarding our current state of our transportation system is exclusionary. We need to raise the profile of this as an issue. As it stands, decision-making in the city about what kind of transportation system we have is not, as far as I can tell, being deliberately decided at the political level, at the level of elected leaders. It has been essentially delegated to staff to figure out. But these are questions of our fundamental values of the community, and we need to start this if we're going to really make meaningful and also durable improvement by raising the profile of these issues and making it a greater part of our community's consciousness that we have a choice of having a controlled system that leaves a third or more of the people out in the cold versus something that's more accessible and creates more liberty. So that's the first thing, raise the profile. Second thing is, and this is a lot more tactical, I would like us to have a way to improve a kind of mapping or assessment of our current specific issues of hotspots or pinch points or whatever you call them. Those could include ice and snow removal problems that individual community members face in their routes, what they need to use. It could be curb cuts that need to be made or that need to be fixed, other dangerous situations. The city certainly does have a process for taking feedback, but I would be interested to explore the idea of like more of a, from the disability community standpoint, or maybe a broader accessibility standpoint, what are our real hotspots, and making that public visual description. The third of my 4 points is that this is fundamentally a question about our system of governance. So I sort of said before, at a high level, what kind of transportation system do we want, and who are we leaving out by our decision? This should be more deliberately and transparently asserted by our city council. So I'm running for city council. If I'm not on city council, I'm still on tap, and I'm going to continue to work on this. But I know this is something that we just haven't had city council really stand for, and we need to do it. So that's part of the governance question. Another thing I'd like to explore more on is the way that we do public policy, transportation projects. In my view, gives too much attention to squeaky wheels in community workshops, and not enough to objective first principles information around like who actually has objective from looking at a map. And one example is like if you imagine, sort of a little metaphor, but if you imagine back to the time when we were figured out asbestos was a problem in our homes. If you held a community engagement workshop and you said who's concerned about air quality, nobody would come. Nobody would come and say, we need this fixed. But we know from a public health standpoint that there is objective risk and there is objective need. So in the same way, I would like us in our public policy making when we do transportation projects to give a lot more weight to the knowledge of community members who are being isolated and left out in the current system, but whether they have the time to show up to a community meeting or not. Then the third part of this governance is, Craig, well, I've been enjoyed having, I think you've been at least a few tab meetings that I've been a part of. I would like to see more representation by the disability community at the board level, in projects as they're being considered. And I would include the disability community also with other communities that are not well represented. So those are my 3 on governance. And then the final one is on technology. I think we have both some important opportunities and risks as new transportation technologies take hold. So we do have opportunities, transit, to make it work better and become more effective, possibly through automated technologies, possibly through more on demand. I think we have some I would just say opportunities that we should be looking at as the technology improves. Also, micromobility, or more generally, small battery electric power systems that give new motive power to people who are outside of vehicles has a lot of different use cases, factors, and I think there's some, anyway, that's something that's an opportunity for us to watch and be thoughtful about. But we also, on the risk side, as we use new technology, the capitalist impulse is to make profit, and that involves reducing costs. And I just want to make sure that as we enter new technologies into our transportation system, that we are making sure that maintaining and then improving accessibility for all. So those are my 4. They're pretty high level, maybe except for that second one, but I think ultimately they'll create a good chance for scale and scope if we can get them right.
Great, thank you so much for going into those 4 points in a little bit of detail. There's a lot of info in there, but I really appreciate you going into each one so broadly and kind of providing an overview. And the next question is kind of a follow-up to the beginning of your first answer, where you were talking about the importance of ice and snow removal and keeping track of curb cuts and understanding the use of those and how that's essential to transportation. And to me, that sounded like you were kind of describing the need for first mile, last mile, and that being incorporated into transportation plans and things such as snow and ice removal and the status of the infrastructure of the sidewalks and curb cuts being available and barriers. Some of those problems are due to a lack of code enforcement in areas where there could be overgrown shrubs or trees, or there is no snow and ice removal, or we have people parking in front of curb cuts that don't understand the use of them and how that's providing a barrier. So with knowing the importance of first mile, last mile to access to transportation, how would you and are you committed to enforcing existing accessibility laws and regulations? And in addition to enforcement, how would you plan to strengthen them to make sure that everyone actually gets equal access to not only the transportation systems and sidewalks, but also to kind of that first mile, last mile to make sure that people can navigate their communities equally and safely as well?
Great question. Okay, I'm gonna try to say three things. The first is I touched on the values, like what are our actual political values. I don't think this isn't to pick on anybody, current council or staff or anybody, but I just don't think that it is considered a political priority that we ensure that everybody has the accessibility that they need. It is just simply not it is not something council revisits very often ever, that I've heard. So step one is what I said before. We need to bet more explicitly have a political level expression that says this is something the city has to do. And then I again now the mapping and transparency thing. I've learned through different projects and such in work that putting daylight on problems often can help them to go away. And if we had a better integrated map that the public could see on where our current lacking problems, and those even might include shrubs, shrubs are in the way, or snow and ice. I think that would create a more impetus. It would tend to create more impetus for solutions. With code enforcement, it's nuanced. I think in general, yes. I mean, we need to do code enforcement. Some of our codes have some equity issues involved with telling neighbors themselves who might have disability issues that they're in charge of fixing their sidewalks, and they have an income situation that it's like they can't. It's hard for them to hire a contractor. So we need to get creative. I am not satisfied our current approach in which individual neighbor residents are responsible for their sidewalks. And yet I don't know the exact solution. So I think we need to explore that. The second of the three is to say, I guess it's sort of big picture, and I mentioned this earlier, but the question is, how am I committed to enforcing existing laws and regs on accessibility? I, at a high level, am really actually quite passionate about this, and I'm somebody who studied business as an undergrad, and then I got an MBA, and I have learned a lot about capitalism. And one thing I know pretty well is that the forces of capitalism tend to work against people who have needs outside of the middle curve. And there's marketing classes that train people to think about how to reduce cost, or to train managers and executives how to reduce costs to such an extent as to more certain demographics, and that are not profitable. And even I've heard in like business classes, strategies for literally getting rid of customers who are deemed too expensive, and it's appalling. And it is a reason why we should not be giving a system that operates like this over to our basic freedoms and liberties. So I recognize this is happening. I can see it. It is something we need to stand up against, and I feel very strongly about it as a principle. So I, in general, would like to see a greater public and management of our systems that have people around, or it should be permitting them to move around freely. It's a little bit of a conceptual point, but I think that again, the principle or the value of it is where we have to start if we're going to make big changes. And then the final thing is I need to listen more. I've heard some from Craig, from you and others. I know that on snow and ice removal, we're not getting it right, just in general. But I would like to spend more time meeting with the community, more examples, and try to understand patterns better, and think about if there are specific changes in policy, maybe the way we do contracting. Maybe there's some innovative project ideas that could help to alleviate some of this with subcontractors. I'm not sure, but I'd like to listen more. That's my.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that ties perfectly in to the next question about listening more in collaborative approaches. So the next question is how we make that happen. What steps will you take to collaborate with disability advocacy groups and involve people with disabilities in these decision-making processes? How do you envision this collaboration happening, and what steps can we do to ensure that we have a voice at the table and we are being listened to for policy decisions that impact our community?
I have a pretty brief answer for this. I'll restate what I've said before first, which is I don't think the disability community's voice is as potent in our governance and our decision making as it should be. So I think one place that I would like to explore, I guess, investment or expansion is in our existing processes, like our community connectors program that I understand has more of a focus on racial equity, but either grow or take inspiration from a more organized, methodized system within the city. I think this is a this is a space where we have people like me who are trying to be decision makers have to be very careful to check, be very skeptical about our own biases. We think we need to do. I think this is the sort of thing that demands again a professionalized process in the city, and I think the community connectors program is an example of what's doing that. And regularly, when members from that team brief city council, you can watch the city council be kind of, it's like revelatory. And so that's the first thing, is resist the urge for me to actually like say what we need to do. But I'll just summarize it by one, we need a more professionalized process that is answering for this question within the city. Secondly, one way or another, the way that we do our board representation of boards and commissions and of any other appointments in the city, we should have a much stronger way that we include or incentivize or encourage members of the disability community.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And definitely want to be respectful of your time. I know we requested just 30 minutes, and we've hit on a lot of the questions that we had talked about prior to our meeting, and there's a couple left and we've kind of touched on them. So as we wrap up, I've wanted to allow this time for you to either choose one or two last questions that you'd like to cover, or just any other thoughts that we didn't hit on today that you'd like to have a chance to talk about. And I know, as you said before, and we really appreciate, this is hopefully just the beginning of a collaboration and future conversations, regardless of your future position, whether it is city council or continuing on the transportation advisory board. I think there's an understanding that you want to be inclusive of the disability community, include us in future conversations, and that's what we really appreciate and hope for in the future. But yes, I'll allow this time to just pretty much say anything that we didn't get to or want to elaborate on further. And again, just appreciate your time.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Craig. Yeah, this is a ton of great questions. So we didn't get to all of them. Maybe a workshop one day we'll do. But I'd like, if I could, to try to pick off some answers to two of them.
Please.
And these are partial answers, but I just would like to share. So the first one is regarding education. What strategies do you propose to enhance inclusivity support available to students with disabilities in school? So my most important answer, I do not know the answer to this question. What I do know is I have kindergarten, second grade girls I'm active in in a BVSD school locally. I'm very active in the school. I've been doing work around parent networking to try to create more support structures around transportation. I've worked in a relationship with the district and very interested in innovation between the city and school district. So I mostly don't know, but one thing I do know that I've learned is that I desire that Boulder would be a very welcoming place for students with disabilities to come to. And I know that parents that are from smaller towns, more rural locations, they can have real hardships around disabilities and can be often looking for community. I would like to make Boulder a kind of place to attract families that are looking for such community. So that's the first thing on education. Do I have a minute for one more?
Yeah, no, we have as much time as you need. I just know I requested 30 minutes of your time, and I wanted to just be respectful of that in case there's other meetings and not go longer. But we have as much time as you're generous enough to provide. So please don't
Okay,
let me stop you.
great. Okay, thanks, Craig. I'll just do one more then. Okay, so this final question I'll pick off is how will you ensure that emergency preparedness and response plans are inclusive, cater to the needs of people with disabilities? I know that people who can't or don't drive are completely dependent on someone else or a well-functioning system for their survival in an emergency situation. This is an area where isolation is deadly, can be deadly. Now, I don't actually know the current system that we have in place to ensure or to maximize accessibility for all emergency situation. And this is on my list of things to understand, to perform an assessment how I think it is working with feedback. What I do know is that our threats, environmental threats from a heating climate, is causing these threats to grow. I've heard a lot about wildfire risk in the campaign. That's a big one. But floods, we are the most flood prone and flood at risk community in the whole state by some measures. And there's other issues, significant volatile precipitation to extreme cold and heat events, excuse me. And I'm going to go back to governance again. We need governance around this to create assurances at the highest level that we have a way to backstop and support and make sure that everybody's taken care of. So this is sort of a partial answer because I don't actually have the plan. I'm not sure where the plan lives or what state that plan is in, but I would love to talk with Craig, you and other stakeholders on this as we go. As I said, I'm a climate professional. I've been working on climate mitigation and adaptation for most of my career. And there's a lot with this that's just going to become more important as we go. So I think I'll leave it at that for that question. And I don't know that I have anything else to close other than to just thank you, Craig, and anybody who's taking the time to listen to this. If elected to council or not, I have an open schedule. You can just schedule with me. Anybody can schedule a time with me on my email signature of Accountability. And I'd also like to explore ways to have a more organized, maybe workshop or formal discussion if there's any appetite for that. So.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. We really appreciate your time and just the thoughtfulness of your answers and wanting to just help us get a better understanding of who you are as a candidate. And I hope this informs everyone's decisions and provides some good education for when you're heading to the polls. And thank you very much.